Hello and welcome to the first ever Bylund Clinic Podcast. Something I've honestly been really excited about doing for a while now, and I'm glad that now it's kind of finally coming together. So really excited about that. But before I get any further into anything else, just want to let you know how to get a hold of me. So if you have any questions or suggestions about the podcast or anything else professionally related, you can email me at info@drjamesbylund.com. That's info@drjamesbylund.com. And you can also get a hold of me through social media. So you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook at the Bylund Clinic, where I often share information and discuss topics that are very similar to those in this podcast. So if you find this podcast, interesting in any way, hopefully you would also find my Instagram and Facebook posts equally as interesting. So I guess before we get going any further, given that this is the first podcast, I should probably share with you a little bit about myself. I started out working in schools as a school psychologist, actually down in San Diego, California. Started out down there, did that for about 5 years. And then at about that time, my oldest son was about a year old, and my wife and I are both from the Bay Area. So we thought it would be a really good idea to move back up to the Bay Area where we could be closer to the rest of our family and grow our family. And at that point, I got into special education administration, first at sort of at the county, and then as a special education director for a school district. And about 5 years ago, I left that work and went into private practice as an educational psychologist and specialized in psychoeducational and neuropsychological evaluations of children and youth. And with a particular focus on education and what barriers there may be to their learning and school performance, and what we might be able to do to help remove some of those barriers so they can, reach their potential. And whether it was in San Diego or as a school administrator or in my private practice, what's always driven me is the fact that I care about and want to help kids and kids that are having a hard time in school for any number of different reasons, right? Whether it's due to social and emotional and psychological factors, or due to some type of learning difference. And one of the things that I've found, and this kind of gets to my reason for doing the podcast, is for parents, and well, frankly, even for those that are working in schools, this is a very confusing process. For parents, the information and for very confusing information at times from the school, when perhaps you're observing your child having difficulties with learning and you're being told things like, "Oh, don't worry about it, they're fine," and he's a boy, he'll grow out of it, right? Or they're too young to assess for a need for any type of specialized services, or maybe you have outside evaluations that are saying that your child has a learning disorder or ADHD or anxiety or something impacting them in school, and then you go to the school and the school is seemingly telling you that they're just fine, which is super confusing. But even beyond that, right? The assessment reports that you get as a parent are insanely confusing, right? I mean, I don't think they really make sense to anybody, right? I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years, and frankly, a lot of them don't make a whole lot of sense to me, and I do this for a living, day in and day out, and if that's your experience as a parent, believe me, you're not the only one. I oftentimes think that the only person that understands the psychoeducational assessment report at an IEP meeting is a psychologist, which is really super unfortunate, because at the end of that meeting, that person leaves, and everybody else at the table, the parent and teachers and other support staff, who didn't understand the assessment report are the ones that are actually now responsible for implementing something that's supposed to be able to make a difference, right? And so, even just the assessment reports or the IEP process itself, this massive document with all of this information that you're presented with and in an hour is supposed to somehow understand and consent to and sign off as this plan or program that's really going to make a difference in your child's learning. And what I found is it's just terribly confusing. And my hope then with this podcast is to provide another resource, a way to be helpful for parents, but not just parents. I mean, other people that work in and around special education to be able to understand the reports that they're given, really understand what these different developmental disabilities are and what their implications are if you have dyslexia, right? Or if you have ADHD or separation anxiety or depression, and what are the implications of that? What can be done both in school and out of school to help a child? What are some of the best treatment recommendations for these things at various stages of development? But also share information about IEP team meetings and the IEP process and how as a parent can I sort of navigate through that, because it's unbelievably confusing. I mean the regulations are so long and so confusing that I guarantee you even members of the school team really don't fully understand them. I'm not even saying I fully understand them. I think I understand them better than most people that are the general public, right? Because I do this for a living. But they're very confusing, and so for a parent, it's extremely challenging. And my hope is through this podcast to be able to share information with you that might help empower you to be able to navigate through that process, maybe a little bit more skillfully, be able to ask the right questions, and feel confident in the assessment findings and recommendations and treatment plan for your child. So that's my hope. With the podcast, and I believe that, having had experience working in schools, including as a special education director, and then also having the experience in private practice and working with families and really sort of learning to understand and appreciate how challenging of a process this is for a parent who really just doesn't want anything more than to be able to support their son or daughter, and to give their son or daughter who's truly struggling what they need in order to be able to succeed in school and in life, and I think the fact that I've seen both, right, that I have experience in understanding special education process and regulations, but also sort of understand the real life experiences of parents and children who are really struggling, and to be able to bridge that gap there, I think and I hope provides something unique and valuable to those who want to join in and listen to the podcast. Now, there's a few things obviously I probably should say and hopefully would go without saying, but but just to be clear, right? I'm not offering any specific legal advice. I'm not an attorney, in any way, shape, or form. So I'm not offering any legal advice. I'm also not making any diagnosis or treatment recommendations that are specific to your child or yourself or somebody that you know, right? If you have questions or concerns about those things, then go talk to a professional, right? And get the legal advice or the assessment or treatment that you or your child or a friend may need. The other thing that I'd like to say here before we start to kind of wrap up this first introductory episode is there's certainly a lot of topics I'd like to discuss. As I've mentioned, things related to psychoeducational and neuropsychological assessments and helping people to understand and navigate through those, or answering questions about various developmental disabilities and what they are and how do you know if somebody has one and what you might be able to do to help, right, as a parent or a professional working with these children and youth. And And of course the IEP process and learning how to navigate that with more ease. All topics that I plan to discuss, but I'm doing this to help you, right? I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this to hopefully be of some service to parents and special education professionals, and really more importantly their kids, and the kids that they serve. And so I want to be able to answer your questions, and so I would really encourage you to email me, again, that info@drjamesbylund.com, or follow me on social media and pose your questions there. And can't make any promises here, right? But I'm going to do my very best to take those questions and incorporate them into these podcasts, so that you can get answers to your questions, right? So that when you tune in, you're actually hearing information that's relevant to you and useful and helpful for you and your child. And so that's my goal. So please send in those questions. I'd love to see them. I'd love to incorporate them and develop podcast episodes around them. And I thank you, right? I don't know what else to say. Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this today. And hopefully to tune back in, right, and listen to some of the things that I'm going to be discussing about in future podcast episodes. So thank you again. I wish you the very, very best, and look forward to spending some more time together.